I have said repeatedly since early 2019, R. Kelly should have a constitutional lawyer on his legal team. Multiple constitutional rights of his have been violated, and the instances in which those violated rights have happened are not being showcased and documented for future record. The right to effective assistance and counsel is a constitutional right, and in this instance, the Sixth Amendment. Considering how long R. Kelly has been locked up with no bond, taking loss after loss when it comes to pretrial motions, and the negative hit job coverage he has received in the media, it is my belief he realized a long time ago that his legal team was failing him. A defendant's legal team can deprive him or her of effective assistance and counsel by providing inadequate representation. Inadequate representation can result in a defendant not receiving a fair trial and ultimately a just outcome. Case in point, Bill Cosby should have never been on trial. That's because the previous Montgomery County District Attorney Bruce Castor made a promise that if Cosby sat for a civil deposition, he would not be criminally charged then or in the future. That is significant for several reasons. Number one, he waived his Fifth Amendment rights, which involves self-incrimination, to sit for that deposition based on the promise that DA made. Number two, this means his Fifth Amendment rights were violated when the deposition was unsealed and used against him criminally over 10 years later by the current Montgomery County DA at the time, Kevin Steele. Number three, this means his Sixth Amendment rights involving effective assistance and counsel were violated because Cosby was held criminally responsible for the previous DA's promise not being honored by the future DA's office. It was said Cosby should have got it in writing and signed off by a judge. But it was also said that a judge would not have signed off on such a promise. So what that tells me was Cosby was failed by the state of Pennsylvania and his own counsel because, number three, if the promise DA Castor made was one he could not make and further invalid because a judge would not have signed off on such a promise anyway, then DA Castor never should have made such a promise. Making such a promise got Cosby to detail aspects of his relationship with Andrea Constand that he would not have otherwise detailed. This, to me, implicates the state in Cosby's conviction because the state's conduct before trial involving the previous DA's faulty promise ultimately led to the defendant being put on trial and having that promise not be honored used against him. One could look at this as Cosby was set up to fail from the start. Number four, his own counsel at the time should have gotten a promise in writing and signed off by a judge, which apparently they did not. Had they done so and ran into a roadblock by a judge saying such a promise cannot be made and therefore I won't sign off on it, they could have then declined having Cosby sit for the civil deposition. Number five, this should have been prominent during Cosby's appeal process, but it wasn't. If Cosby's Pennsylvania Supreme Court appeal is denied, this to me will be yet another example of his Sixth Amendment right to effective assistance and counsel being violated.